Celtics Reddit podcast.
Back out to Smart. Fakes the pass all the time. Three. Bang! Gets the Williams screen. Lobs it up for Robert Williams.
Should he know? Jaylen Brown. What a gooder!
Tatum. Durant, the long reach. Tatum crossover, pull-up jumper. It's good. 50 points for Jason Tatum.
Hello and welcome to the Celtics Reddit podcast. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. We've got another great guest joining us tonight. This time, it's Jake Issenberg of the Backdoor Cut podcast. Jake, how you doing, mate? Thanks for coming on.
Fellas, I'm good. Thank you for having me. We're here. Celtics, another big win. We're back on track. Feeling good.
Absolutely.
Ready to talk some Theis.
Yeah, great time to have you on. And look, we've of course got our longtime co-host Jackson back on tonight. Jackson, welcome back. So how are you doing?
Thank you so much, man. It's great to be back under such luxurious circumstances, put it that way. So yeah, things are good. Things are good, man. It's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Here the Celtics are 50 wins with 2 games left in the season. There's a Reddit comment from a user for Orgeb who said the Celtics have reached 50 wins after being 23 and 24, which is, I think, just a nice sort of observation to pause and have. We're on the cusp of the playoffs and off the back of the win against the Bulls today. We're going to focus on how the Celtics are looking now that the playoffs have essentially arrived. Jake, are the Celtics primed for a deep playoff run? Like, what are they doing well and what could they be doing better heading into this first round?
They're definitely primed for a deep playoff run. Today's definitely the first day I'm feeling a lot better since the Rob injury. Like, they're back to just destroying teams that are good. Like the Wizards game, it's the Wizards, but the Bulls could easily be our first round opponent, and we wiped the floor with them. And so, good to see the defense get back to that elite level, moving the ball. I think the biggest thing that I saw from today and last game is that Theis now feels like they've kind of figured out how to use him as Theis as opposed to using him as Rob. And so that's been the thing that I was a little concerned about after the Heat game and a little bit in the Pacers game. Like, when Rob first went down, I was like, I will be fine, all good. But then that Heat game got me a little worried. But now, Theis is back. It's 15 points today. Looking good.
Theis is nice, baby.
Yes,
absolutely.
nice.
What do you think, Jackson?
Yeah, getting back to like dominant wins is a big thing for sure. Again, particularly against teams that you expect to do it against. But for me, it's like we were so used to, March being like the Jason Tatum show and obviously Rob Williams and everyone contributing. But, you understand what I mean? It was Tatum, who was getting the accolades. I feel like the last few wins we've had, though, it's been more about the supporting cast. That includes Theis, definitely includes Peyton Pritchard, Jaylen Brown, obviously, in there as well, too. Al Horford today. I'm starting to see like a real like cohesive togetherness of the team that has been there for a while. But like Jake was saying, when you take like a piece as important as Rob Williams out, who knows what's going to happen to that chemistry. So I'm now no longer worried about anything standing in front of us in the playoffs. And I know we're going to get into the specifics of that a bit later. But to circle back to your question, like I absolutely think they are primed for a deep playoff run. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jake, you touched on it a second ago, but today was sort of like the first time where we felt like ourselves again, where it was like, okay, that's still good. Theis can hold it down. We started to blow out a couple of teams, and the Bulls, who are, obviously not to the early season standard, but like they're a pretty decent team, and to blow them out on their own home court without Rob Williams is pretty special. Got some stats here for you guys. So
yes,
it's a bit of a delineation point where like the last 5 games are the first 5 games we played without Rob. In that time, we're first in defensive rating at 106.0, second in net rating, 7.3, 8th best offense, so it's taken a bit of a hit at 113.3. We're 3-2 in that stretch, and we've dropped down to 14th in opponent field goal percentage within 6 feet of the basket, which you consider what Rob Williams' strong points are. It's pretty obvious. But the current Theis, Horford, Jays, and Marcus starting lineup, according to Cleaning the Glass, in 62 possessions so far this season, a plus 27-point differential and a 133.9 offensive rating, which is insane.
That's astounding.
Both in the top 100th percentile league-wide. Effective field goal percentage also in the top 100th percentile at 65.2%. They're also on the top 99th percentile in offensive rebound percentage. They do struggle a bit with turnover percentage and free throw percentage on either way, so they allow too many opponent free throws, and they don't get enough free throws offensively. But generally, I mean, if you were going to say, okay, let's wait and see and make an assessment in 5 games time and see how we're doing without Rob. Like, this is kind of best case scenario. Jake, what are your thoughts on that, and how confident are you, I guess, in the Theis-led lineup?
I love it. The only stat there that wasn't encouraging is the opponent free throw rate, and that's, you could assign that purely to the war on Theis, and that's nothing to do with Theis. Yeah, this is just the powers above. Adam Silver has it out for our guy Theis. He's back to committing fouls by getting smacked in the face by elbows and shoulders. So that's the only stat that I'm not pointing in that favor. The fact that we're like, the 8th best offense is like a dip relative to what the last 2 months have been. It's still hard for me to kind of wrap my head around how good all of the stats are. Like, I always kind of knew the defense could get to this level, but the offense being elite and just having 25 plus assists every single night is ridiculous, especially for a team that really struggled with ball movement and people said were too ISO heavy for like a lot of the early season. And so to see those stats completely turn around and refine themselves in honestly a really short amount of time, like Rob was so important to what they were doing, and to refine that so quickly, I think is really encouraging.
What are you seeing differently in terms of like how especially the defense, but I guess the offense as well, how it's being run by Udoka and the team sans Rob? Like, I mean, they're obviously switching less. Like, what else are you seeing from the team in general without Rob?
We had that one game with the Raptors where everybody sat and Marcus kind of got to be Jaylen and Jason for a night, which honestly was one of the funnest games of the season, I thought.
Yeah.
It's too bad we didn't actually get that win, because we would have. Anyway, well, I'm sure we'll get to the seeding stuff later, but I felt like that kind of bled into the Heat game a little bit, and like Marcus was 3 for 15, and the roles just got a little messed up again, and so just getting it's so important for everybody to know their role and to completely buy into it, and I think to everybody, which is small adjustment period, but instead of making Theis be Rob, they're like, Theis is a different player. Let's play the game according to Theis' strengths. Like getting Theis on the short roll, Rob doesn't really have that in his game. It's pretty much catch it on the short roll and fire a pass. He took a tiny amount of pull-up jumpers and not really attacking the basket off that short roll. But Theis, he gives you those like 10 to 12 foot pull-up jumpers. They get 15 points today, and I feel like that's just an element that Rob doesn't give you. And so I think that's probably the biggest difference in the offense with Theis versus Rob. And Theis can fire those passes off the short roll as well. I think he makes pretty good decisions off the catch too. Maybe not quite as good as Rob, because the Time Lord can make some pretty special passes in that spot. But I think everybody just re-solidifying, and when Tatum gets blitzed, it gets to Jaylen. Jaylen, I think, has kind of figured out that he's going to be really, really important because of how much attention that Tatum's getting. Like, he should take that kind of personally. People are going to blitz Tatum. I'm going to have this extra space. And man, he's been on fire. So, if that answers your question.
Theis shoots Theis shoots the 3 as well. Like we don't have a legitimate 3-point shooting big man if you don't count Horford, which I mean you probably will. But yeah, I mean that's an element that Rob doesn't give us at all too. So like further to your point, it's almost like so wild to me that he was here like not that long ago, has come back in, and it's like been just the most seamless transition. Like I know it's mostly the same team, but it's a different style, it's a different coach, it's a different backroom staff. There's a lot of different new players as well too, and it's like no worries, just like a bike. Like, and he's riding into like something like almost better than he did before. But I think it's just a better team overall too. So yeah, I echo that about Theis for sure.
Yeah, and like it feels like years ago, but the bubble season was literally 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And he was our starting center for an Eastern Conference Finals run all the way through. And so I think, honestly, probably the most underrated move of the deadline for several reasons. One, he's just good, but when you've got Horford who's a bit older and Rob with the injury history, such a good insurance policy. Like, it cannot be overstated how valuable that is, and you're seeing it now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was debated when Brad made the trade to bring in Theis, and like the contract was, I know we had Danger Card on the pod, and like him and I were debating whether or not it was like a viable contract going forward. And, I don't want to say that Danger Card was wrong.
yeah. I was going to say, sure, Danger Card's always like, fuck, worst deal, books are cooked.
Yeah. But an essential part of Celtics lore for all of us, like consumers of content, because I don't know about you guys, but I tend to fly really high on all the good news and tend to ignore the bad news. And so to have a guy like him on to sort of bring me down, it's essential. I've got to read a post-game comment here, a post-Bulls game comment from user Let's Basketball. They say, I live in Chicago, so I'm watching the local version. Before the game, Kendall Gill and their host were agreeing that the Celtics are their best possible first-round matchup. After the game, Gill was hanging his head low and saying, damn, and they don't even have Robert Williams. The game crew was also so ejaculatory of every Celtic and the way they were playing all game. It was so nice to hear, and eventually, I became ejaculatory too. Great win. Great comment. Thank you, Let's Basketball.
So much quality info there.
What a roller coaster. I'm very happy for Let's Ball, whoever that was.
Wonderful. While we're on that topic of the playoffs, Jake, let's consider the teams that we can play. Obviously, we know we can't play, anyone in the 4-1. So we're looking at the guys below us and the playing games. I would like to know from you who your ideal playoff scenario matchup is. Ideal, you can interpret that however you want. I would say probably the easiest game or the one that you want the most. Who is the one that you want to avoid? And if it's not your ideal matchup, who do you think the best matchup would be that you would like to see just personally?
Man, it is such a mess. Like, just before I came on, I was kind of running through just the schedules of the teams and who can move. Like, I thought the Hawks were out of it, but they could easily eclipse the Cavs, same as the Nets, and then all of a sudden they're an option as well. The Cavs are by far and away the best option. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not close, and that's purely not their fault at all. Like, they've just been absolutely decimated by injuries, but it's basically just Garland and kind of it now. Mobley, like Mobley, I don't think going to be back. I think Allen, I don't think he's back yet. He might be back for the playoffs, and I just think from the Celtics side, that's just a player that they're going to have a really easy time slowing down. Like, Marcus is going to have a field day with Garland in a playoff series. Then it's the Bulls. Then it's the team we saw today. And I had the same experience as that commentator. I was listening to Locked On NBA. There's the Locked On Bulls guy last week was like, yep, we want the Celtics. Today, same exact reaction. He's like, no,
ejaculatory.
Real bad news for the Bulls. So it's Cavs, Bulls. Like, analytically, I think the Nets are who I want, but just the lore of Kevin Durant is so scary. But I actually think the Raptors are a better team than the Nets. So I think, like, my heart's telling me I want the Raptors, but my head's telling me that I want the Nets, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And the Hawks, I don't know, somewhere in the middle there. But that's kind of my hierarchy.
Gotcha. Ben, what would you say? Sorry to jump in there.
Well, yeah, no, I pretty much agree with Jake. Like, it's not easy, and I think, that's why we're talking about it, and I wish we had, like, a solid answer for listeners, but, matchup-wise, it's obviously the Bulls, right? We saw it today. It's the best-case scenario. You can go at Vucevic in the paint. They don't have Lonzo Ball. It's the consensus preferred matchup, aside from maybe the Cavs, if we can land that. And looking at the Nets and the Raptors, I honestly can't say who the better matchup is. Like, if you pull all of their players and put them into a combined list titled most likely to go God mode in a playoff series, the Nets have the top two players on that list. But then again, like Jake said, like, the Raptors are probably a better team. We can't score against them. Meanwhile, the whole league can score against the Nets. So I feel stupid for saying this, and Spoonie and Joe, I've shut me down on this podcast before for having this opinion, but I feel like the Nets are, like, maybe the easier out there. What do you think, Jackson?
No, I'm with you. Hey, I'm with you. Like for me, I'll work backwards. Like the best one that I want the most is Brooklyn by far. It can obviously, for sure, man. It could obviously go wrong because we all know who Kevin Durant is. We all know who Kyrie Irving is. We all know who Patty Mills is too, even though he doesn't do it in anything other than an Australian jersey. But I think you dump out multiple champions, multiple finals MVPs, like Kevin Durant, obviously, they both won titles. But you do that, the pantomime villain that is Kyrie Irving and the history with Boston, that's like the ultimate statement scalp win that you could take. And that would just confirm all the hype about this team. Yeah, they're for real. All right, they're going to actually do this. I wouldn't be scared of no one if we dump the Nets out round 1. 100%. That's the one that I want to see the most. I think ideally, though, it's Chicago. We just saw what we did to them today. They've got no momentum. They don't have Lonzo Ball. DeRozan might get you one game the season that he's having on balance, but not even remotely worried about them. The one that I want to avoid is Toronto. And the reason being is I think we'll still win that series, but it'll be a prick of a series. They'll be in our face and up our ass like the whole time, and it'll just won't be a fun experience. But probably biggest thing of all, the whole who's vaxxed, who's not vaxxed, is it even a thing, is going to become a narrative, and it's going to become annoying and maybe even a bit of a distraction. And I just don't want that at all.
Yeah. 100% with you on the vax thing. Like, I'm starting to think that maybe we do have one or two guys that aren't. And so, like, just dealing with whatever that looks like is just not fun at all. And I'm with you. I'm not scared of any of these teams. Like, if we play the Nets, not worried at all. It's kind of similar to last year where the Heat beat the Bucks in the bubble, and then coming to the playoffs, the Bucks matched up to the Heat, and everybody like the Heat were kind of this sexy underdog pick. But on paper, there was no reason for anybody to think that the Heat could actually beat the Bucks in a series, and the Bucks wiped the floor with them. I think that's kind of how this would go. Like the Nets, man, they're going to have basically started their playoffs like a week ago. Like, I was having a look, Kyrie and Durant are averaging like 40 minutes a game over the past 8 games already, with 2 games to go plus play in. Like, they're going to come in tired. Kyrie's in the middle of Ramadan as well. Like, I just think that we'll be able to beat the crap out of them. I loved having Rubb because I think that the size that and the intimidation that he gave you, obviously huge, but they just are so small. They're so small. I love Patty, but Kyrie, Patty, Dragic, Seth, Claxton, like, they're all small, and we have so much physicality. Udoka ball. There's no way they can hang.
Udoka ball. I love it.
Yeah, not scared.
Nice, career milestone as well. Not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but for Tatum to knock off Durant and Kyrie in the first round. On the vaccination thing, definitely concerning. There was a post that was 6 days ago now on Celtics Reddit by Brodo Baggins, and I'm not going to read out the whole post, but the title of the post is some vaccination stuff with sources, and the purpose of the post is to sort of discount any concerns about the Celtics being vaccinated. And so I'm just going to read out the summary at the bottom, which is some supporting evidence. So one of them, Jaylen and Al indicated that they attended a team dinner in early November when NBA protocols prohibited unvaccinated players from doing so. Jaylen says that the NBA, quote, is doing a really good job getting players vaccinated. Udoka said of playing in Toronto, all the guys, if healthy, are available to play. Al, when asked of playing in Toronto, said, I'll be ready to play whenever. Al, again, when asked if he would play in Toronto, said, absolutely. And Jaylen, when asked if he would be available to play in Toronto, said, I'm excited and ready to play against anybody. That's the summary, I guess, of like whether or not the full team would be available.
Pretty wishy-washy.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little bit wishy-washy, but it's
I didn't hear a lot of certainty.
if we're matching up with Toronto, it's like this is what we have, like, to help us sleep at night.
Al sounded much more likely. Jaylen, so he kind of said the thing about the Players Association and how they're not commenting on things like that. But CJ McCollum is the president of the Players Association and has been doing massive PSAs about getting vaccinated and talking about how he is vaccinated.
Yeah.
So it's not a policy of the Players Association.
Brogdon too. Same out and said it unequivocally.
Yeah. The only people that are saying that it's a right medical privacy stuff are people that aren't vaccinated. I'm not saying he is or isn't. I'm just saying that.
I'm trying to help people out here. I'm trying to calm
I
people down. But
I
mean, you're
I
absolutely
went down the
right.
rabbit hole
No
myself.
problem.
Yeah.
Point being,
So, yeah.
just avoid Toronto in any round of the playoffs.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So tomorrow's obviously huge because like we play the Bucks, the Sixers play the Raptors. So Thibault came out today, right? He's not able to play. He's not vaccinated.
Yeah.
I think that matchup for the Sixers is awful. So I mean, obviously we'd be going for the Raptors regardless anyway. But tomorrow, if the Raptors win that, we'll pretty much lock the Sixers into the 4 seed, and it would be the 4-5, which would just be so good. I just think that the Raptors can't score very well, and the Sixers are built to give up points to the Raptors. And so,
Yeah,
praying.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's like a best case scenario in terms of two difficult
us.
opponents like
Yeah.
cancelling each other out.
Exactly.
Which is really good.
Yes.
A quick break now to talk about our sponsor. Support for the Celtics Reddit podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code CRPOD at manscaped.com. If my math is correct, that's like 8 million balls, give or take. I don't know. As a man well into his 30s, I've got hair popping up in all kinds of weird places. It's almost like a second puberty. Manscaped set me out a Performance Package 4.0, and man, is it a game changer. Inside this package, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. First off, the Lawnmower 4.0, this trimmer is the future of grooming and, dare I say, the greatest ball/body trimmer ever, maybe? Definitely in my experience. Their 4th generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 is waterproof and also has a 400K LED spotlight you need for a more precise shave. Because this trimmer is waterproof, you can say goodbye to the mess on the bathroom floor. But you thought that was good and you want to take your grooming game even further to the next level. The Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker nose and ear trimmer, and believe me, as you advance in age, these nose and ear trimmers are more than necessary. The Weed Whacker is also waterproof and provides proprietary skin-safe technology which helps reduce nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate nose holes. Their Crop Preserver ball deodorant and Crop Reviver ball toner will change the way you approach your hygiene routine. Trust me when I say this, fellas, your balls will thank you, and your partners potentially as well, hopefully. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxes and Shed Travel Bag. Bring your comfort and boxes to another level. It's time to take care of yourself, so go to manscaped.com and get 20% off plus free shipping with code CRPOD. That's CR as in Celtics Reddit, pod as in podcast. Support the podcast, and more importantly, support yourself. Manscaped.com, discount code CRPOD. Jake, are you concerned at all by what could be an emerging mini slump for Jason Tatum? Like, if you look at his April stats so far, 3 games played,
Yes.
3-point shooting down from 45% in March to 23% in April. He's down to 40% shooting overall, 69 percent from the free throw line, which is not nice, really, if we're being honest. His steals, blocks, and assists are all up, and he still maintains a point differential of plus 14.3, which is close to what it was in March, but like those shots just aren't going down. In terms of like measuring, okay, this is where we're at heading into the playoffs, like, is this somewhat concerning to you?
It's the great thing about this Celtics team over the past 2 months. It's been like really hard to find the one thing that's wrong with the team. You know, for a while it was Derek White couldn't hit any shots, and yes, I had the same stat. Last 5 games, he's 18% from 3, and yeah, obviously, and the free throw thing, it's weird. Like it was like earlier in the season, he's just missing free throws when he's obviously a good shooter. Like a little bit worrying. He's got time to kind of work through it a little bit, but. Like, even today, right, what was he, 5 for 18? And I just wanted him back in the game. He just makes such good decisions with the ball, the defense, the rebounding. Like, even if he's missing shots at this point, the team is playing well and scoring. And he's getting to the basket. Yeah, short answer, yes, I'm worried, but long answer, it's fine, probably.
Yeah, the team's like still doing well when he's on the court, which is like team does well, team wins. Simple, but makes sense. Jackson, any additions there?
Yeah, no, not really. That sums it up nicely. But like, I think like Corrales had a tweet like, when was it? I can't remember when. It was a few months ago. He's like, that was one of Jason Tatum's best games, and he shot like absolute ass. I can't remember who it was, but I just remember it was the fact that he was finding assists, he was making the right plays and things like that. So obviously we're going to need him, particularly if it's the Nets in round one. We're going to need like that sort of KD equalizer to some degree. But I mean, it hasn't been an issue in terms of like results so far. Maybe if he hit some shots against the Heat, we scored more than 15 points in the fourth quarter, that would have been different. But I mean, it's nothing that I'm particularly worried about, because he's got more aspects to his game now, and there are other guys that can carry the load. And I'm confident he will get back to what he was like last month.
Yeah, and the playoffs, you're going to miss shots. Like, it gets so grimy, and like just showing that you can be that good when you're shooting that badly is so important. I compare it to kind of Paul George. Paul George was better last playoffs, but historically, like if he has a 5 for 18 game, it's like that was one of the worst games I've seen a human play in my life. It's like, what can you do when you're shooting like that badly to impact the game elsewhere? And he can do that at an elite level now. And so even when you're having those kind of games in the playoffs, still being able to grind out wins, like not too worried about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I wonder how much of an impact Rob being out specifically affects Tatum's shooting, or at least his shot quality, which therefore would affect his shooting. Because you think about the spacing that is granted to guys like Tatum with Rob on the court, just with the pull he has as far as pulling the defense out of whack. It seems a small sample size, but there's a direct correlation there with Rob going out and Tatum's percentages dropping on all fronts. So where that does not apply, though, is with Jaylen Brown, who has been playing incredibly in the last 5 games. Just a shy under 30 points per game, 57% from 3, 56% from the field overall, 5 free throw attempts per game, and 5 assists per game, which I think in terms of a 5-game stretch is like a career high for him. Mm-hmm. Like, does that kind of nullify, Jake, the worry about Tatum, and that like Jaylen Brown is just like balling his fucking ass off?
That's probably why we haven't noticed. Is because Jaylen's playing the best he has ever played in the past 10 games, I think.
Yeah.
Like he had that one game missed with that ankle tweak, and then he had that little weird stretch where he was being Jaylen, handle was a little off, missing some stuff on defense, and then I think it was the Kings game. Yeah, a little checked out. I think it was he played fine in that Warriors game where Steph got hurt. But the next game when they just destroyed the Kings, that is from that game to now, he's been incredible. And like, I had just accepted that Jaylen hadn't shown us a new superpower this year. Like, every year he comes in and it's like, oh, so I guess Jaylen is now a top 50 player now. He's 30. And he just makes these ridiculous leaps. And I just figured, okay, this is a consolidation here. He's just top 30 again. But then the last 10 games, he's like, oh, so I can also do the Harden step back. I think you called it on Twitter earlier today, the Brown note, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Is that the... Yeah.
Yeah. Because it makes opponents shit themselves, essentially.
Yeah, which I love. And so he can just do that now. He did it again against the Bulls today. And it makes perfect sense. The handle's back. He has the explosiveness of Harden 3 years ago, where opponents are so scared of his ability to get to the rim. And he's a knockdown shooter. So... yeah, now that he has that, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Jackson, any thoughts?
No. I think it's they're finally like complementing each other. Do you know what I mean? Like the longest argument that's been like, can they play with each other? Can they make each other better and whatnot? Well, I see it, like Jaylen Brown's performances this last few games, like making Jason Tatum better, in a roundabout way. And I definitely think that Rob being out is attributed to that, but Jaylen has stepped up like when he's needed to, and that's been refreshing. And I think like they're both like just finally like getting that synergy that we need them to have rather. So no, nothing to add to that beyond the fact that he's awesome.
It's fantastic that that's just gone now. Like people would try with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell experiencing what the Jays have experienced for years now, where people are tracking the amount of times that they were passing to each other, and now it's just it's all
nitpicking.
And now they're just passing and now they're just passing to everybody all the time, which is just beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jaylen and Jason, they've also been holding it down in their lineups where the other is absent. So. Looking at lineup data over the past 5 games, filtered by lineups that have played at least 15 minutes together in that 5-game stretch, the lineup with the best net rating is Horford, Grant, Derek White, Pritchard, and Jaylen Brown. And if you were wondering, the second best lineup is the starting lineup as it is, with both Jays and Theis and Horford and Marcus Smart. But the fact that the net rating is quite higher with a Jaylen exclusive lineup just shows what I guess is going to be essential going into the postseason, where we need one guy to rest while the other guy kind of holds his own. And the fact that Jaylen is playing at that level now, and Tatum's shot's not going down, but he's sort of commanding the floor on a whole nother level. It's just makes you feel comfortable. I don't know about you guys, but it's the sort of thing that helps me sleep at night. So it's good to see.
That's actually fantastic, because historically the non-Tatum lineups just have struggled, even when Jaylen's on the court. And it's so funny how he levels up like this. It just kind of all of a sudden he's another tier up in several skills. I don't know. I know he's a huge meditator, crystals, all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if he went in the meditation tank or infrared sauna or whatever it was.
It's Mercury in retrograde, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in or out of retrograde. I'm not sure which one you want to be retrograding, but it's happening. And the fact that he's able to carry those lineups, I'm not too, and in the playoffs, I think we've kind of seen from Udoka from a minutes perspective, there might be maximum 8 minutes that both of them aren't on the court. I feel like they're going to be averaging 40 minutes easily, probably higher when it gets to the playoffs, from what I've seen from Udoka so far, which I love, because I know Tatum can kind of just play unlimited minutes, which is great. But shouldn't be too many non-J minutes.
Well, I mean, hopefully, but then just to share all the minutes at all times in the playoffs and just rest in the fourth quarter when we're already in Geno time. But we'll see. I guess looking at the team more broadly, Jake, looking down the bench for the Celtics, and including some of the sort of lesser prominent guys in the starting lineup, who, feel free to nominate more than one person here, but who do you see being an X factor in the playoffs?
Well, look, I'm not a bench guy, but Horford, I said most underrated trade of the season was Theis. I think the Horford trade might be the best trade of any team made this year.
100%.
He basically played the perfect game today. 17 points, 7 from 7, 10 rebounds, I think 2 assists, 0 fouls. Vooch had 13 points and 5 of 13 shooting. Perfect. Playoff Al. He's rounding into form, and the ability for him to pick up the slack of Rob, his shot attempts I've seen over the past 5 games have just gone up a little bit. He's just, imprinting the game a little bit more than he was before. And I think the fact that he's able to do that, the confidence in his 3-point shot, he's just now jab stepping in the pull up. He's ready to go, and I think that his playoff, not only experience, but how well he plays in the playoffs and played in the playoffs with the Celtics, is kind of going a little under the radar at the moment. People love talking about Chris Paul and Kyle Lowry, but it's important to remember that Al Horford is actually a full year younger than both of those guys. So I'm just so happy with how Horford's playing right now, and very excited by what he's able to bring to us, especially from a matchup perspective. The Raptors don't have anyone to deal with the Bulls. We saw it today, and then again, he's the Embiid stopper. He gives you so many elements against so many of these teams. He's, I think, a massive X factor that a lot of people probably aren't going to talk about.
I completely agree about Horford. For me, I'm going to say Pritchard, though. I think that lineup that you read out earlier, Ben, with the best net rating, I reckon a lot of that's got to do with Peyton Pritchard just being a flamethrower. It's like he just comes in and he gets 3 threes almost immediately, and straight away that's 9 points that you're better off by. So I think, although it pains me to say though, I just see him missing a lot more in the playoffs when it does get a bit grimier, when it does get a little bit like more, the stakes just get raised a little bit. So that's the pessimistic side of me looking at that. But if he does continue to shoot, or, you know, if he maintains what he's doing or gets better at that, then that's that second unit that he's a part of, where the game really starts to, like, the gap seems to go from like comfortable lead to, like, you know, off into the distance, you're gone. If he can be still that player in those lineups and get us those leads that we now know we're not gonna blow, or aren't very unlikely to, that's huge. So if his shooting can stay where it is, or like not waver too much, we're gonna win a lot of games in the playoffs just based on his minutes. I really believe that.
Yeah, and to quell some of the concerns of your pessimistic self,
please do.
The Peyton Pritchard, Oregon state titles, big state games. I just think he's so locked in. I just don't think that. I mean, the playoffs, NBA playoffs are a little different to state titles in Oregon. I get it, but I think that his mentality, everything that Jaylen said about him, and the trust that Tatum especially seems to have for him, I feel like he's always looking for Pritchard as soon as he comes on. I would love to see the stats of who's assisted the most Pritchard threes, because I feel like Tatum's got to be up there. He's like, when they run that like pick and pop with Pritchard out to like 32 feet. I think that there's going to be a lot of teams, or whoever we play in the playoffs, are going to be tweeting like, what the fuck? Peyton Pritchard just hit 3 threes in 4 minutes, and now we're down 16.
Yeah.
And we're down 0-2.
The kid from American History X just killed us in the playoffs. What is going on? Pritchard was going to be my X factor as well. I think it's just so good to have, like, finally have, like, the guy. You know how there's always, like, one player on every team that destroys the Celtics? To have that guy that maybe other teams could feel that way about just feels new. So if I'm having to come up with an X factor on the spot, I'd say Derek White, first player off the bench, who was shooting like 18% from everywhere and is now, I haven't got the numbers, but like it seems like he's found not only his shot, but like more than what his shot was in San Antonio. So I don't know what's gone into that, but you know, if he can shoot even like 30% from 3 and 45% from the field, then that's huge given what he already offers us on the defensive end. I want to rattle off a couple of Reddit posts here, Jake, just to finish up and get your take. So first one is by user Blizzard854, who says, in my opinion, we should rest all starters for the rest of the season and hope for the 4 seed. And their argument is basically with the 4 seed, you play the Raptors first and the Heat second. But if you hold second, it's likely the Nets and Bucks, which could be terrible. The other post is by user No Accident 999, who says, I don't think we should rest. There's honestly no point in ducking teams if we're destined to win. We're gonna win. So what's your stance on that? It's pretty divisive at the moment.
It's so divisive. Everybody's like, rest tomorrow, play the Grizzlies. It's impossible to try and figure out what's gonna happen, because I know the Bucks play a back-to-back against someone that's against the Cavs. I think it is the next night. So like they could easily beat us and lose the next game. And so, I mean, I'm actually someone who would prefer to play the Bucks than the Heat, I think. I don't know what it is. The Heat seem to have this voodoo thing and magic against us. It happened in the bubble. You saw it in that game we played early in the week. I know we were kind of reacclimating to life without Theis. But I don't know if you guys feel that at all, but there's like this, on paper we shouldn't struggle with the Heat. But on the other hand, we've played the Bucks so well, going all the way back to that first rookie season with Tatum, and they got out of the first round with Giannis. Like whatever it is, we play the Bucks really well, and just like losing to the Bucks is so much easier to swallow than losing to the Heat. Yeah. So there's that.
I'm actually in agreement with you. I just have a real personal, like, moral opposition to like resting players in games that could like mean something as far as seeding is concerned. I think like all things considered, you take the 1 seed's out of play, you still want the highest seed possible. And I understand having a slightly, easier run going one direction than the other. But I mean, ideally, yeah, you want the easiest, most straightforward probably matchup first, and then you want, Rob Williams to come back, healthy and locked in, and then it doesn't matter who you play. So yeah, sure, the positioning to get, a worse seed for a better first round matchup and et cetera, is one way to look at it. But nah, like I think rest against the Grizzlies, regardless of what happens, just because it's by then we're probably going to be locked into a seed either way, depending on how tomorrow goes and the games following that. But yeah, I think you play this game, see where you land, then make a decision, most likely rest. So yeah, plan.
I just think the worst thing about the NBA, it's like one of the worst things in sports is back-to-backs. Like, you're just at such a significant disadvantage. Like, now they got to drive up to Milwaukee tonight or whatever they're doing and then play a rested Giannis after. Obviously, they didn't play that many minutes tonight, but you're just at a disadvantage. So I just think that beating the Bucks on a back-to-back, if they're actually trying, is just such. And I think Horford's going to rest regardless, which I think is the right move. I think playing 35, and so without Horford beating the Bucks, I just don't know how likely it is. And so I'm fine with them resting tomorrow, but the Grizzlies game, and then I think that gives you the flexibility to either push for that last game or not. And I totally get where you're coming from as far as like not resting and going for it. I do agree with that. I just think the back-to-backs are an atrocity.
Yeah,
they're ridiculous.
It's a real motherfucker. I hope there's like a compromise there where we can play like all that guys for the first half and be like, you know what, it's not happening. Now we start our rest and we rest for like a game and a half, or apparently the Grizzlies, by all accounts, are going to be playing Ja Morant to like ramp him up for the playoffs. So I don't know, is a ramp up game for Ja Morant as concerning as a real game for Ja Morant? Like, can we still win that game? At a certain point, I think just everyone needs to be rested. And I've read the term knee tendinopathy. Associated to the Jays too many times in the past couple of weeks, and I just know that there needs to be rested for those guys to be good for the playoffs. So it's divisive for a reason. There's not an easy answer. It's tough.
Exactly. But at the same time, everything I know about Udoka over this past year, I'm pretty sure that everybody besides Horford's going to play like 38 minutes and it's going to go down to the wire.
Yeah.
That'd probably be the most likely scenario.
He does have Thibodeau vibes in that sense. Like, he doesn't shy away from the extra minutes.
He's a harden the fuck up guy. And it's worked.
I love it. I love it about him. It helps that our best players are under 25. I think that fits nicely with his philosophy there. Jake, we're about to wrap up. Have you got any sort of takes that you're looking forward to firing off that we haven't prompted you for, or any questions that you wish we asked you?
You know what? I got most of my notes off here, which is good. We didn't get into Marcus Defensive Player of the Year stuff, but I think...
Can we do it? Like, what's your take?
I got in at Marcus 10-1 odds a little while ago, and he's the heavy favourite. And from all the little podcasts and stuff that I've been listening to, Zach Lowe, Simmons, like, he's definitely feels like the front runner right now. And out of all of the awards that I think that the team is kind of able to win, Coach of the Year, Executive of the Year, First Team All-NBA, all that kind of stuff, Defensive Player of the Year for Marcus is by far the award that I want to happen the most, just because I think it will just be a perfect culmination of his whole career, stamp him forever as one of the greatest defenders of all time. And I think it has a real shot of happening. So stoked about that.
Yeah, once like Vegas start to like literally favorite it, it's kind of like they obviously don't want to lose money. So it's a pretty good indicator that that's going to be the case. And yeah, like as Smart stands, like we've moved to Slack now for this podcast, but our initial like Google Hangouts group is called the Build Around Marcus Smart Society. Like we've been hoping for this for a long time. So it's very validating, very vindicating for the squad here on the podcast.
Loved and trusted.
Do you think that Rob Williams is maybe going to make like all defense second team or even first team?
He can make, yes, he can. It's going to be tough. I was kind of making the list. He will going to get plenty of votes, I think, in whether or not he makes it over like Jaren Jackson, or Rudy Gobert or Bam. Like, doesn't have that many more games played than Rudy and Bam, so like he's going to be kind of in competition with those guys. But yeah, and Tatum will get some as well, and probably, honestly, Derek White probably gets all defense votes too, from what I've been seeing on a few different places. But Yeah. It's great. It's
The
great.
vibes are good.
All these guys.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you wanted a good time, Jake. It's been great.
Yeah.
All right, well, look, it's certainly going to be interesting to see how the final days of the season play out. That is going to do it for this one, Jake. Thanks so much for coming on.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you, man. All right, you can hear Jake on the very awesome Backdoor Cut podcast, available everywhere podcasts can be found. Follow him on Twitter at Jake Issenberg. Jackson, as always, a tip of the cap to you, sir. Jay and Spoons will be back on Friday. Until then, go Celtics. Peace.